Tracii, thanks a lot for joining our chat today. I'm looking forward to talking to you about a whole bunch of stuff, but in
Okay.
particular, the new LA Guns record.
All
So,
right, let's do it.
yeah. So, real quick, where am I reaching you from today?
I'm in LA today.
Nice,
I'm at this home.
sweet. Have you gotten to enjoy some downtime lately? I know that you guys are not, as far as I know, not back on the road yet.
No,
So,
not yet. And yeah, I mean, I live here and in Denmark at the same time, so I split my time already between two places. So like the idea of touring now is going to make another division in time per year. But yeah, I mean, I have been enjoying um, the time that was allotted to the world by the pandemic. I'm raising a kid, another kid that's already 20 months old now, and he was born right when the pandemic hit. So that allowed me to spend all this time with him. So that was good. Made a bunch of records, made this LA Guns record. Spent a lot of time with my family, yeah, yeah, I have enjoyed the time.
that's great, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I was just, thinking about it and looking at, my notes and everything. And yeah, you have been incredibly busy in the
Yeah.
last year and a half. I mean, when you factor in the Cocked and Loaded live album
Yeah.
too, you've put out three records. Well, you'll have put out in a few weeks
Well,
your third album in the last year.
it'll be, there's an album you might not know about. I did a thing, what do they call them? Swedish rock band. I always want to say Social Distortion, but it's not. It's social some anyways, I put out that album, the Sunbomb record, the that live record, recorded this record, which comes out. I think there's five. I just can't remember. But yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's it's funny how time works because to me it doesn't seem like I put that much time into making these records, because also raising a baby, and I also have a 12-year-old son here. So, that division of time, um, I don't remember recording any of these records.
Dang. Well, I'm wondering like what goes into making a record amid the pandemic logistically? Like what kind of challenges or, just different scenarios did you encounter this time around?
Well, I think I got really lucky because when we did the Missing Piece record, which was 2017, I think, that was the first time I ever did a record where I wrote everything, to kind of like a drum machine, and then had the drummer play over what was already recorded, so kind of a backwards way of doing it. um, and then the second record, we all went in the studio together and did it. But this time, in the way I've been doing, like, recordings for other people's records and things like that, it's email, like, hey, we're going to email you this track. And then I just put it in the computer and mic up all my crap and I do it and then I send it back. So all the records that came out this year, except for the live one, obviously, they were all done that way. So, and now that's just the way I do things. So with Checkered Past, I started writing, about a year and a half ago, I guess. And got like 4 or 5 songs in. Pandemic was heavy. Couldn't get Scott Coogan into the studio because Adam Hamilton records us now at his studio, and he couldn't have people over during the pandemic. So it was just like, hey, you're gonna have to record. You're gonna be playing drums on the album. He's like, okay. So that was really easy, because I have such a great working relationship with him, anyways. Like, hey, this is that, and he'll go, yeah, I got you. Let me do what I'm gonna do, and then send it back. I'm like, okay, it's done. He's just really fast, dialed in. His drums are set up 24 hours a day, so it's like consistent. It's always great. Um, so that was the beginning process, was getting him to play drums on like basically demos, you know, and then simultaneously Phil will get the demo track with the real drums, and he'll start working on lyrics and vocals with our co-writer Mitch Davis in New York. So they were just on email, but Mitch had to have Phil build a vocal booth in his house because he was going to be isolated as well, you know, no traveling. So then, you know, Phil's working on vocals, I'm working on guitars and keyboards and all that stuff. And Johnny's in another location putting bass down, and Ace gets the tracks when I'm done, and then he does like a track. And except on his track, he played almost all the guitars on I'm Living Today, I think is the name of the song. I just added the slide part. That was the easiest one for me on the record. Awesome. So in the end, you know, there's no conversation. You know, it's like, here's the music, do your thing. You know, each guy. And then Mitch Davis works with Phil exclusively. So I never really get any rough vocal takes. You know, it's kind of rough, but almost done. So like that really eliminates like any chance of Phil and I arguing, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the process is really smooth. The band spends zero time in the same room, which is such a great thing. You know, I mean, if the record's turned out horrible, then I would say the opposite. I say, hey guys, we really need to get in the room. We need pre-production, blah, blah, blah. But I think the benefit of experience and songwriting experience and the sort of team that does these records now, it's just smooth and easy, and it gets done, and they turn out great. You know, the quality control is up to each guy when they're doing their part, you know. And Adam ended up mixing this record too, and he's just so talented. You know, it's hard to lose.
Yeah. It's cool that you feel that way. I feel like some musicians, I've seen differing opinions on whether, you know, remote recording and pandemic era recording is a good thing or a bad thing. Some people just really feel uncomfortable having to do parts separately. But I mean, it sounds like what you're saying, you guys really, it sounds like you also got the benefit of getting to like be as perfectionistic with your parts as you wanted to without the like weird pressure of like feeling like your bandmates are breathing down your back in the studio or like, you know, come on, man, we got to get out of here.
That's a real thing, you know. And the other thing is trust, you know, with the people you work with. You know, sometimes you want to be in a situation together so you can monitor each other. And, you know, musicians tend to get lazy. You know, that's good enough when it's not good enough, you know, and we'll fix it in the mix kind of mentality. I just think I'm really lucky. I just think the people that are involved really have a lot of self-respect in what they want to put on a timeless recording, you know. And that's the thing that musicians should always realize, especially when they're self-recording, is that what you're sending back, that's around forever, you know, until the, you know, sun engulfs the earth. Those audio recordings are around forever. So, you know, some alien guy, you know, 6 million years from now is going to hear your recording by chance and go, what the fuck was this guy thinking? You know, you don't want to leave it open for interpretation. You know, it's got to do your best.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible that this could be somebody's first LA Guns album that they ever hear. So you want it to be.
I always think that way.
Yeah.
Always, of course. And it goes to, you know, the timeless question, is this your best album to date? You know, and it's going to be to somebody, you know what I mean? Someone's going to buy the record, and it's going to be the first time engaging with a band, and it will end up being their favorite LA Guns record because it was their first record. So I can't, you know, I'm too guilty, you know, to slack. And that's the one area in my life I don't slack, and that's, you know, recording and writing and letting the stuff, you know, hitting the send button in the email. You know, first you hit the record button, then the second step is send an email, you know, to the mixer. Those are two things that I'm really serious about in life, and children, but but that for the career, it's the send button and the record button.
Right. That's great. So you said like when it came to like the vocals, especially, Phil had time to like work on his own thing. By the time you got to hear them, like he had he had kind of like gone through the rough versions of the vocals, and you were pretty much getting like the pretty close to finished thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
were there any songs that you would send out to the other guys that somebody was like, look, man, I'm really not feeling this track, or like the songs that you sent out, are those the ones that pretty much wound up on the record?
Yeah, that's it. It's I do the the sorting before I send. I mean, there every now and then I'll think I have some brilliant idea for a piece of music, and it's not. And you got to know where that line is. And I don't cross that line. So every piece of music has to be special, before I hit the send button, right? It has to be like I had an idea, here was the idea, and the idea came to life and it makes sense and it's actually better than I thought it would be. That's always the criteria. And LA Guns has always created music that way, is that the music first before we, put Philip through the torture, test. Because I mean, ultimately, when you write this way, it's up to the singer to destroy the song or make it a great song. It's not, they don't have the benefit of, hey, I put this song together, man, it's groovy, and check out my chorus. It's not like that. It's like there were times where, when we were younger, where Phil's big line to me is like, I can't write over jazz, man. He would say that to me. I go, it's not jazz. Just listen to it enough times and you'll see where the verse is. And we always got to the end, right? We always did it. But it's the way we do it. And, 30 something years later, it really works. It really works for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It's really cool that you guys are able to do this whole album remotely too, because when I listen to it, it's got a very live feel to
Yeah.
the performances. It's got a good swing and a good groove, and the performances are tight, but they're not mechanical. So that's
No.
really cool.
That's the thing about, Johnny and I know we've been with enough producers in our life to know to play behind the beat, which is a really important element in making a professional sounding rock and roll record. Is if the guitars and the bass get ahead of the drums, that's when people say that's a terrible record. They don't know why it's a terrible record, but that's one of the biggest elements, is that you're kind of hearing a guitar before a snare hit or something, and it's like you don't get it, you don't understand it. But the fact that we are really aware of that, practice, or kind of rule, we just make sure that we're, some people call it playing in the pocket, which is a strange, if you're in a pocket it sounds like this, so it's not in the pocket. But it's getting that right. So it all starts with the drummer, doesn't it? So if the drummer really lays down an interesting track, that really has feel, like really like, oh man, this, I don't want to put any music on this because I love this drum track so much. I just want to, stare out the window and listen to drums. That's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
It's really inspiring to have drum tracks like that. And then you kind of just pretend the guitar is the big 64 box or 128 box of crayons, and you just go, oh yeah, there, oh, yeah. You get to do all those kind of things. So, I'm happy to say that with the past 3 records, including this one, the stars have aligned in the mechanical process of making recordings.
Yeah, totally, man. That's awesome to hear. I mean, I just as a fan, I've really enjoyed listening to this entire album, and what I really like about it is that like nothing about it feels like a warm, fuzzy nostalgia trip or anything like
Right.
that. Which, making records 30 years into your career, it very easily could have gone that way. But it sounds just really raw and urgent and raunchy too, which, like the first track Cannonball, I was kind of getting it's almost giving me like a Aerosmith jailbait sort of feel, the way that Phil was singing those vocals in the beginning.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I could see that. I think also the other one that's like that kind of reminds me of Bright Light Fright is Ace's song "Living Right Now." Like it really has this super cool Aerosmith rocks thing about it. I guess that just comes from the years of Aerosmith worship that we all partake in this band. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the thing is like I never ever go into a record thinking what do LA Guns fans require? What do they require? I know what they want, because they're LA Guns fans and LA Guns should sound like LA Guns, or it should have the thing. But we've been really lucky in the fact that, starting from the first record, we established some diversity, so, by having, let's just say One Way Ticket on the first record, which really isn't a ballad. It's more of a murder ballad, or a suicide ballad or something.
Mm-hmm.
So as the years have gone on, just adding a little bit more, and when possible, really opens up the listener's mind to accept that the next record's going to be different than the previous record. And for me, from a selfish point of view, is I can only make records that I want to listen to, which I think is important. And I think that I have the same taste as the listener, people that are definitely the hardcore LA Guns fans,
Mm-hmm.
So I try not to take my rockabilly influences and stuff like that. I try not to interject stuff like that into it.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's rock and roll, to a metal LA Guns fan, it might come across as corny or lighthearted or something like that. And LA Guns music certainly isn't lighthearted. We're lighthearted, but the music isn't. So I just really careful if I'm going to use like any of those kind of influences that are a little bit outside. I darken them up. If there's like a rockabilly influence, for example, you wouldn't detect it because it's layered in distortion or something like that. But it is all about the elements, and that's what makes Phil interesting. Is he has a lot of British influences, folk influences, and then kind of outlying rock and roll influences that contribute to his phrasing and his lyrics and his acceptance of what Mitch writes too, because they both write, Mitch Davis, Phil. And for an American audience, Phil's lyrics really come across as different and unique, because he's British. He doesn't sound British, which is really interesting. But yeah, the elements, they check themselves in, and then the next record they check themselves out. So you'll find the same elements throughout the catalog, just in different places. And then every new record, the idea is like, what do I want to hear? What song didn't Zeppelin write? That I can write. What song didn't accept right that I can write? Whatever it is, and that's more where I draw fun and inspiration from. Is, what would Keith Richards do here? Well, what would Randy Rhoads do here? What would John Bonham do here? What would Neil Peart do here? Like all those kind of fun puzzle pieces constantly go through my mind when I'm writing the music, and I try to keep it from getting progressive, and I think we maintain that really well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I always thought that you as a guitar player and LA Guns as a band were, there was a little bit of a few different elements kind of informing the sound. Like you kind of split that difference between being like a metal player and like a more old school blues rock player.
It's hard.
And, yeah, and I mean, when LA Guns was coming up, you guys were certainly part of that Sunset Strip scene.
That's
but
right.
by the time that first record came out in '88, the whole thing was definitely starting to get a little contrived,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. So, I mean, did you guys feel like you were out of step with the trends at the time?
Um, you know, when our first record came out, I think I was 21. I thought I was setting the trends. You know what I mean? You know, when you're that young, and I mean, that's why you do it when you're young. You know, it's like, you know, in my case, especially in Guns N' Roses, you know, we had so many conversations about what we should do or what we shouldn't do. That, you know, a few months later, when reforming LA Guns, I had the same thought process of like, you know, don't do that. You know, do what you want to do. Don't do that. Don't be Motley Crue. Don't be Wasp, even though those are my favorite bands at the time.
Hmm.
You know, so it was like, you know, balancing the musician that you are, and then also wanting to achieve a recording contract, because it's more about the recording contract than the fans at that point, because the recording contract gives you the platform. You
Hmm.
know, a lot of people will tell you that getting the recording contract is the sentence of life or death, because, you know, that's where it begins. So yeah, you know, we were selling out clubs in LA, but had we made a tragic record, well, that would have been the end of that. So all that hard work in the clubs, and it wasn't hard work, it was fun. You know, doing that is for nothing. It's like people that reinvent themselves thinking they're going to gain more success every year and a half. They don't realize they're starting from zero trying to attract people. So the idea was to, you know, get enough recognition locally to get a record contract, and then taking the record contract seriously once we got it. And then, you know, the conversation was defining a sound, you know, like, hey, what do we sound like? You know, who do we sound like? What are our influences? How do we make sure that we take our collective influences and make our own sound? You know, and if nothing else, the first LA Guns record definitely did that. You know, you can't compare that record to anything else. It just doesn't have obvious influences. As time goes on, and the chemistry breaks apart, and, you know, you're trying to be an adult, you know, and I was in my 20s for the first 3 or 4 records. Then I really started drawing from influences, you know, and saying, hey, you know, okay, and this is that. I can't write the first LA Guns record over and over again. You know, it's just, I couldn't do it. So, so the path of diversity, realizing that as long as Philip's singing, and that's the sound of LA Guns, you know, because nobody sounds like him,
Hmm.
which gives me a lot of freedom to experiment and see what sounds work. And, you know, like the song "Let You Down," for example. Even when the music was done, before there was one word written, I was so excited about that piece of music, because I knew as soon as Phil's voice was on it, it was going to be a new sound for LA Guns that was definitely LA Guns. You know, so I think that's where the excitement really lies still to this day for between Phil and I, is that I'm going to come up with something and he's going to get excited by it, and then I'm going to get doubly excited when I get the lyric back.
Hmm.
So that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, there's a lot of elements to Phil's phrasing. It's like, you know, you can kind of, even though it's not necessarily in his accent when he sings,
Right.
in the sensibility, you can hear the British influence there. Like
Oh yeah.
the way he does, it's like it's almost like he's able to slip into like a sort of talk singing sort of thing at times. It's kind of like it's like he has an intensity to his vocal, but without over pushing him,
Right.
over exerting himself.
I
It's a
think
cool thing.
I think especially you're right on this record. I think on this record he was able to take his mid-range vocal and really sound uh husky in a way, you know, almost like one of the Gallagher brothers or something. You know, there's a little bit more British in it, and it's more of a mid-range, in terms of, you know, the stave, you know, where he's singing. and I really like it. You know, I like do more of that, you know, kind of
Mhm,
thing. That way, when he goes high, it's really more meaningful. You know,
mhm.
dynamically, I think he's come a long way, and I mean, we've all come a long way. I'm 55 and he's 64. We've come a long way. You know, and I'm just glad that we enjoy it. You know, that's the thing is we're definitely not complacent about LA Guns and when it comes to creating. And it's glad to know at least we're a band of this long in time that is still excited about making what we consider to be our first record every time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about, you know, the money. Phil, I was just watching an interview with Phil, you know, and he made a really interesting point is, you know, we're not Elton John wealthy, you know, but we certainly have enough money to not have to fuck around and do stupid shit for money.
Mhm.
You know, so we really do this because it's what we enjoy doing, you know, and it seems that we've had more success being comfortable as to where a lot of people would tell you that the successful artist comes from, you know, poverty and hard times and things like that. And we certainly had our share of that. But, you know, it's not necessarily always true in every case. You know, Hendrix once said something to the effect of, you know, you can sing a lot of blues when you're supposed to be making all this much money, right? And there's something to be said for that, you know, especially coming from a lyric point of view. For me, if I'm in an angry state for 2 years, doesn't mean I'm going to write an angry album of
Mm,
music,
mhm.
you know, because I always have found soft music to be more satisfying when I'm in turmoil in my life, you know, like Elton John or Enya or anything that starts with E, you know, that seems to be soothing. Um, you know, generally when I write really heavy stuff or really fast stuff, it's when I'm in like goofy mood. Like, listen how heavy this is, dude. Yeah, check that out. You know,
Yeah.
that's really more playful, but it comes across on recordings as dark and evil and angry. And
Mhm.
so psychology is just very weird and very important for creating music.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people definitely like to glamorize the kind of scrappy upbringings of bands, the rags to riches stories, but I think a lot of people fail to ask themselves like, did those artists succeed because of those circumstances or in spite of those circumstances?
That's right. That's right. You know, that's a really good point. You know, some people have enough drive to pull themselves out of the pits of hell, where most people lay over and die. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, we only have so much strength in our psychological makeup, you know, and, you know, the flight or fight syndrome, which is fairly common. People know what that term means now. It's a lot easier to give up and
Yeah.
go a different direction and find security, you know. And for a lot of people, for example, a Jimi Hendrix type, his security was in playing music, meaning, you know, from one club to the next, to one country to the next, you know, being in a caravan of people, creating, socializing, and that was his life's blood. You know, that's where his security. You know, he didn't really have what I would consider like a home base.
Mhm.
You know, which is just a magical, tragic story in itself. You know, he had no choice. You know, either he was going to stay on the club circuit, you know, making $2,500 a night, or something great was going to come of it. You know, and it did. You know, but that was his circumstance. You know, Led Zeppelin. You know, they pretended they were the Yardbirds for a week, and then they became Led Zeppelin, and bam. You know, so every circumstance is different. You know, and ours is certainly just the one that just keeps going.
Yeah. You mentioned, being young, thinking that you were setting every trend, and you were,
Yeah,
rewriting the rule book when you were cutting your teeth in the clubs and starting to
yeah.
make music. When Appetite for Destruction came out, I'm curious, like, what your impression of that was, and if that had like any impact on you as you were still writing those songs that became the first batch of LA Gun songs, or just any takeaways that you had from hearing that album.
It was such an amazing, and I remember everything about it. Okay, so we were actually recording our first record when, well, before it came out, I got an advanced cassette. We
Mhm.
were LA Guns was in the Village Recorder. We're recording our first album. Guns N' Roses just finished the record. I don't remember who. Somebody sent me the cassette over to the studio. I was like, wow, okay, what's this going to be? So I went into Studio A, which is kind of a vocal room, and popped it in. I listened to it by myself. The standout was "It's So Easy." I was like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" Like, holy, like the double voice, the high voice and low voice. First thing I noticed was
Mm-hmm.
like wow, I thought it was what I expected and more, because I knew how great the band was. And so I got really excited, and I ran into the big room where we were. I go, guys, man, I got the Guns N' Roses record. Let's go listen. It's amazing. And everybody's reaction in the band was like, yeah, that's all right. I'm like, and then one of the guys said, yeah, you're just excited about it because you still think it's your band, kind of vibe. I was like, how could you say that to me? Whatever, man. Anyways, thought it was amazing. And me and my tech couldn't wait to leave the studio to go home to listen to the record at home.
Mm.
And we listened to that record just like any other fan would. Like we really bought into it. And at the end of the day, the greatest thing about the album is it's a real lifestyle album. The lyrics tell stories that are based on reality, turned into maybe a little bit more fantasy, but they're all rooted in some truth somewhere. And the lyrics and the attitude for the time were truly refreshing. Coming off of hard metal was really the focus. Motley Crue, Shout the Devil. um, we didn't pay attention to Theater of Pain, but Shout at the Devil was definitely. And other bands like that in the hard league, Wasp, obviously, Rat was a little slick, for what we wanted to do, what Guns N' Roses certainly wanted to do. So it was all about the conversations that I had still putting Guns N' Roses together. It was like, how do we blend Hanoi Rocks, Aerosmith with Accept?
Mm.
Right? Like that was kind of, those were the parameters, so that kind of left out Sabbath, left out Van Halen, left out Scorpion. So, it was blues based, but hard.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And so, and also the LA punk element, not the British punk element, but definitely the LA attitude, the punk street attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was an immediate success because it achieved the lifestyle, it achieved the story of what was going on. And that's why it holds true to this day. Use Your Illusion and that stuff, it's good, and there's some really good songs on those records and things like that. But the reason why Appetite for Destruction still has a band selling out stadiums today is because it was such a big changer. It was such a reality check. People singing about things that were so ridiculous, and Axel coming out singing "Bend Over, Bitch, I Got a Use for You." It's like that set up hardcore rap, didn't it? You know what I mean? It's like this is reality in 1986, 87.
Mm-hmm.
So the guitars just keep showing up. But yeah, the record had a huge impact on me. I loved it. I'm still proud of it. Even though I didn't play one note on it.
Mm-hmm.
I really know how special it is.
Yeah. It's funny that your bandmates said, "Oh, you're just excited because you think it's your
Yeah.
band." I feel like if that were true, you would have actually tried to dismiss it and be like, "Oh, forget those guys." You know,
Right, right. I mean, that's the fight or flight, right? That's the fight or flight response. It's like, the flight would be, oh yeah, whatever.
yeah,
But, I just always held the band dear, and that has always been my my attitude towards Guns N' Roses. Is like, hey, I left the band for uncomfortable reasons. You know what I mean? And it had nothing to do with the music. It had nothing to do with uh, me not respecting the musicality and the direction and the idea of the band. So to see it come to life, because going back to setting trends, it's like that was the idea. You know, let's be honest, let's be real, let's be great.
yeah,
It was, and it still is to this day.
yeah.
Good stuff.
Did you did you ever allow yourself to, get into the game of what if, what if you had played on that record? What if things had gone differently? Or did you
Yeah,
not?
I mean, how could I not? I'm a human being, and the truth always comes. The truth is that it takes so many elements for an earth changing, world changing, society changing event that I feel if you change any one of those elements,
Hmm.
it won't impact the same way, including my glorious, wonderful personality and guitar playing. It wouldn't have been the same. There is a chemistry that Slash has in that band with, look, those five guys, man, on that first record. You just look at the cross, you look at the characters of those guys, that's Guns N' Roses, And Steven Adler's drumming on that record, it says everything about the direction that band was going. But the what if is it's like, had I not had this like really stupid view of the world of like, I'm going to make it because I'm this guy, and let's say I was proven wrong. Let's say I didn't have success, or I wasn't able to create music, for the next 30 years or however long it's been, and keep myself alive and play live and make recordings. Then I might have a very different opinion. Now, I might be like, oh yeah, those guys, blah blah blah, and there's a big honor in having my name in the name of that band. It's like arguably the biggest rock and roll band of all time. And the first word is Guns. That's my last name.
Mm-hmm.
How could I be mad at that? How could I, have any reservation about being part of something that's so important to culture musically? So at the end of any of those thoughts I have, you know, you just got to look at what's great about it. And it's pretty great.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. And you're totally right. I mean, in this huge cosmic story that led to the creation of this thing, this record, like you were an integral part of that story. And that alone is something that's really awesome.
It is, the story alone is worth $5. It's awesome.
Oh man, that's great. Um, well, flashing forward to the present, um, I'm curious, I assume you were probably working on some of these records that are coming out this year simultaneously, or at least probably close to one another.
Kind of, yeah, I guess so.
So when you were working on the Sunbomb album, um, what what was that timeline like? And how were you able to distinguish between like this is a Sunbomb song, this is an LA Guns
Right,
song?
right. There was a time, this is so bizarre. So I had basically finished full strength demos for Sunbomb by the end of 2018. So
Okay.
were on tour, and let's see, sorry, 2019.
Got
We're
it.
on tour in October, whatever, and the label is already pressuring me for new LA Guns material, and Michael Sweet hasn't done anything on the Sunbomb stuff yet. So I have, 12 tracks for Sunbomb, one track for LA Guns. The label's pressuring me for LA Guns, even though they're putting Sunbomb out.
Mm-hmm.
Michael wasn't ready. And so there was a week of time where I was like, Phil, here, you got to work on this. Or that whole plate of music could have been the follow-up to The Devil You Know, which musically would have made sense musically, because The Devil You Know was getting there. It's getting pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody talked some sense into me. It could have been the label. It could have been my manager. I don't know. And Phil certainly didn't want to sing that material. And said, okay, we're going to, you got a year to do LA Guns. Like, oh, so then I got inspired and started writing LA Gun stuff while I was finishing the Sunbomb stuff in real time, like putting the real guitars on, things like that. So there was an overlap, but there was never any mistake that the music was different from one another, because the Sunbomb record is so focused. It's so, it's got two dimensions. It's not a multi-dimensional album at all. It doesn't have a reggae track on it, for example. Not that the LA Guns does either, but close. That I'm glad that things worked out the way they do. The label was understanding, gave me 12 more months, to do it. So, and at the same time, that's when my baby was born, which was around February 2020. So then finishing up Sunbomb, getting started with the baby, trying to take care of my wife, and being in Denmark, and the pandemic hits, and I got to start a new LA Guns record. That's where Let You Down came from, which I think we released in April of 2020. It was the first thing I wrote for LA Guns, and it was so cool. And Phil had got it done so fast. Like, I don't know when a record's coming out. Let's put this out now.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody agreed, and it had a really great impact. Unfortunately, it was the first single for the record it's not coming out till a year and a half later. So I like the story. The whole story lines up. But I was also doing the Swedish rock band record during the writing of the LA Guns record. But that stuff I wasn't writing. I was just playing on it, and stuff was very rough demo form. So I was kind of constructing their music. And Social Disorder, that's the name of the band. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I would be constructing that stuff, and I did a song for a band called the City Kids in England. And I was able to step away from that and look what I did on those sessions and say, oh man, maybe I'll add a little bit of that element to the stuff I'm writing for LA Guns. So like all the other projects really kind of helped in forming an opinion song to song for the new LA Guns record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I can't picture Phil singing on those Sunbomb songs.
No, he told me so. He goes, mate, I like it, but I don't know. I'm like, yeah, and I caved instantly. I'm like, yeah, I understand.
Right. I mean, you probably had the inkling too. You hadn't written it for him in the first place, so
no, I hadn't. But back to my rule of thumb: as long as Phil sings on it, it's LA Guns, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my thing. But I think it's the wrong direction for Phil.
How was the collaborative process with Michael different than with Phil?
It was completely anonymous. It's kind of like having a pen pal. Like, here's the stuff. All right, I'll send you the music a year from now or the lyrics. Like,
Wow.
okay, see ya. But that was one of the greatest experiences of my life because when I started getting the finished tracks back, um, seriously, a year later, one at a time over a period of a week, one at a time, two at a time, kind of like that. It was like Christmas for me because for that type of record, I trusted Michael to
Mm,
that level to know that through our influences and that heavier kind of dark stuff, that he was going to deliver. I mean, he's a vocal gymnast. He's incredible. And yeah, I'm so proud of that record. I love that record. And however we did it, if we ever do another one, it will be done exactly the same way.
that's awesome.
And again, that's Adam Hamilton playing drums on that too.
Right.
Yeah, he's
That's
just the guy.
that's super cool. How did you and Michael even have the idea to work together in the first place?
Well, I do stuff for Frontiers Records. We have a great relationship, and that was the beginning of kind of the series of, we want you to make a lot of records for us, kind of an attitude. I'm like, I want to make a lot of records for you. That was my attitude.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, what do you want to do? And I want to make a satanic metal record, and you have to know what satanic is to get the joke. But anyways, they said, fine, you should have Michael Sweet sing on that satanic album. I'm like, exactly, great idea. And I had just really become close with Michael that year, earlier in the year. And I sent him a song. I texted him, a piece of music. He was in Michael's hobby shop, whatever it is, Michael's fabric store, with his wife. Gets a text from me, and within 10 minutes, he goes, "What is this?" I go, "That's me. You want to sing on it?" He's like, "Hell yeah, I want to sing on that." I'm like, okay. I go, "You want to sing on 11 of these?" And he's like, "Are you making a record?" I certainly am. And he's like, "I'm all in." And it was that easy, and it was that fast. So and what kind of led to the immediate answer was that Michael and I have been trying to convince promoters to book LA Guns and Striper together as kind of that perfect balance of attitude rock tour, and no one would do it for various reasons, but we really wanted to work together. So that's our little collaboration, and I like that one. A
That's
lot of
awesome.
people like that one.
Yeah, I mean it's an awesome album, and
Yeah.
I mean I would say it's very, on one hand, very different from what you've done before, but it also, because like we said, you've got these different elements that influence your playing and always have. It makes perfect sense that you and Michael would do that. And
It does. I think so.
yeah, I mean I think Michael is a guy again who, like, I think people maybe forget just how many like metal bona fides he has. I mean, dude is like a monster vocalist, and
Oh yeah.
Striper has never been shy about their love for like classic heavy metal either.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt about it. The thing, it's not my place to comment on Striper, but since we're such close friends, and he's got to be aware of it. On one hand, they have this great, Christian believer following, which is great, but on the other hand, it's also maybe prevented, them from reaching a broader audience to where they could have been an even bigger band.
Mm-hmm.
Which is but that's a decision, isn't it? I mean, that's we're going to do this, we're going to stick to this, and this is what our beliefs are, and this is what we're taking to the people. And the one thing, knowing Michael, that I really enjoy is he does have a sense of humor about it. He's not closed-minded about things, and he writes stuff like "To Hell with the Devil." It's like, okay. And
Yeah,
then he sings on the Sunbomb record, and it's like one of the most evil sounding records you've ever heard in your life. It's like, okay, so Michael as a human being is very deep, and has a lot of these influences and is possibly well read and comes across as an intelligent musician, and that's where my respect for him lays right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. They also they did that cover of the Trooper a few years
Yeah,
back, which was I thought, a pretty inspired song choice
yeah,
given, their history. And they crushed it. So
absolutely. They crush everything. I mean, that's the thing about that band is that for whatever people's perception of them are, they're a serious metal band and they're great at what they do,
yeah,
no doubt.
for sure. So I know you've got I follow you on Instagram. I love seeing all the gear that you bust out and give little rig rundowns. What are some of your main pieces of gear that you're playing right now?
Well,
And I guess like I know you're not touring right now, but if you were to be on the
we're
road,
getting ready to though,
yeah.
so that's kind of what's going on right now. Um, the Head Rush pedal board system has been the center of my live rig for like 4 years now, going on 4 years. And what it is it houses like every pedal you could imagine and a series of guitar amplifiers. I don't want to complicate it for people that don't know what all this craziness is, but
Yeah.
it's like having a complete guitar system in a pedal board, and you
Hmm.
plug it into speakers or powered speakers, however you want to say it. So I'm able to go in there and I say, oh, I want my rig from Cocked and Loaded, you know,
Hmm.
put it in there. It's like it's there. If I plug it into a stereo and play guitar, it's my Cocked and Loaded sound.
Yeah.
I record it. If I play it live, it's there. So that's the center of my sound, and it probably will be for the next 50 years if I make it that long. Because it's so easy to use it as a touch screen, so you drag and drop, your pedals and all your stuff. So it's like real intuitive. Any idiot can use it, and it sounds good. So that's the thing. And then what's behind me right now is I use these VHT D50 amplifiers. Um, they just are really unique. I use the power sections from them. Sometimes I use the preamp sections from them. And that seems to be a really nice system, especially for my tech, because we don't really we're not going to carry 412 cabinets, which are really heavy.
Yeah.
So it's like a series of a lot of 212 cabinets, which are fairly light with the D50 heads. And then I have other pedals that I use with the Head Rush from a variety of places. I have my own pedal, which just came out by a company called SVI Sound in Bulgaria, which is a preamp or a distortion pedal, depending on how you use it in the chain. And you kind of crank everything on the left. There's three knobs, a volume knob and a tone knob. And then the third knob is, you call it a gain knob, but it's really kind of modeled. If you have it almost all the way to the left, it sounds like a overdriven Fender Deluxe. In the middle, it sounds like the classic JCM 800 sound that I used on Cocked and Loaded.
Hmm.
And then all the way to the right, it sounds more like a high gain kind of Mesa Boogie 5150 kind of thing. And so I'm going to be using that pedal. And then TrueFi, I have like a vintage color driver, which is like a color sound overdrive pedal.
Hmm.
Um, and then I use various Emma pedals, which is a Danish company that makes handmade pedals. I also have my friend Albert Kazleader pedals. He made me a Tone Bender Mark II with some extra sauce in it. I'll be using that. And these are all just for me on stage because audience doesn't really give a shit as long as it sounds good and not awkward.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it sounds great.
Yeah.
But these little nuances for me actually inspire me to play when I'm playing live. Like, oh, I hit the yellow pedal, I feel yellow.
Yeah.
Whatever the psychology is. But I'm just putting all new pickups in all my old Les Pauls that are being made by Bare Knuckle, Tim Mills.
Oh,
That's why he just handed me this guitar. And they're just like, I'm getting closer to Jimmy Page every day.
beautiful.
That's the idea. It's like you'll get those 59 Les Pauls just right. and that's my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
What kind of those bare knuckle pickups? What kind of output are they? Magnets, stuff like
They're
that.
Alnico 5 magnets, aged. I don't know how he ages them, but he ages them.
Hmm.
And they're low. They're like 7 under 8. He does other things to them though that he tries to explain to me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But these ones that he made for me, I have 3 sets of them. They're the right ones. They're
That's
the
all.
right pickups.
Yeah.
Oh, which reminds me, we are going to do, and it also has to do with the wiring harness. He made me these special wiring harnesses to do things. So next year, we're going to put out the bare knuckle gunbucker pickups. So people that want them, they'll get not only the pickups, but they'll get the complete wiring harness.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like a super 50s, wiring style, and with coil splitters, phase reverse, pot, kind of like my blue Gibson. Gibson made me a guitar with exactly that wiring, with burst bucker pickups, but these are just a little bit more special.
Yeah. Little oomph. The Alnico 5 magnets, like they add a little extra punch to
They
things.
do. They're mid. It's that the Ocean by Led Zeppelin mid range. Damn, 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 damn. That bark.
Totally.
And that's particularly in the middle position when you get it right. The pickup where the pickup output is just right, not too low, but not high. You don't want to overdrive anything.
Yeah.
You let whatever amp work and you let it do the work. That's what I go for, and
Yeah.
I love that middle position, and it's really difficult to get it exact. It's really, the builder, like my friend Sean at Pariah Pickups, he's awesome. I have some pickups he built that are awesome. Larry DiMarzio, I kind of was involved in the PAF 59, which is a replica of his out of his actual 59 Sunburst,
Mm-hmm.
and they're great too. But there were some tweaks that I personally needed to get something a little bit more hollow. That's the only way I can describe it, because in the neck pickup, I need it to be just as bright as the bridge pickup, but
Yeah.
still sound like a neck pickup.
Yeah.
And that's a really weird, hard formula to come up with, I guess. But Tim Mills, he's legit. Like, he's super old school. He's British, so being British, growing up in that era of the Who and
Oh yeah.
Cage, he really got his finger on the pulse. And so we're working together now, and I'm really excited about that relationship because he's a cool dude and he has way more children than I do. So I'm like, all right, good stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, I've got a double humbucker Strat that I swapped out the pickups for DiMarzio's, and I've got a
Yeah,
PAF Pro in the neck.
yeah,
And it's like it's pretty close. It's like as close as that guitar is gonna get to any
right,
single coil sound.
right.
Because I really don't like single coil guitars, but I do wish that I had that, spanky Strat sound
Yeah,
every now and then.
yeah, yeah. That's the whole idea behind, my 4 main Les Pauls, is that when you pull the tone pots out, they essentially become single coil pickups, but
Yeah.
they don't sound like a Strat. They sound more like a Telly. Like a
Mhm.
little bit more, and you still got the other half of the pickup kind of working, kind of inefficiently.
Yeah.
So it's a very specific, you know, cleanliness. It's like a very clean sound with this little bit of dirt on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the goal, because I push them in and it's humbucker all the way. I hit a certain patch and I'm metal.
Yeah.
Hit another patch, pull those out, and I'm AC/DC. You know what I mean? It just,
Right.
that's how I compartmentalize different tones in my head. It's like, oh yeah, Hendrix, Angus, Slash, Randy, Eddie, Page. It's kind of like that. So I have to be able to have access to that all the time when I'm playing live. In the studio, in the room, I have all that shit. You know what I mean? I
Right.
have all the right amps, I have all the right vintage pedals, tape delays, like all that stuff. So recording, when I'm here is like a long process because I'm like, let's do that. Oh, yeah, that's cool, But I also like the luxury of, being in Denmark and recording in the apartment because I have a head rush and a computer.
Yeah.
Now I record on an iPad. I don't even use computers anymore.
Oh, dang.
So now I'm going straight into an iPad, on a little Scandinavian desk with some monitors, and I've got the Vox AC30 and a Biodynamic M160, which is the guitar microphone. That's the one that Hendrix and Page always recorded with, and that's it. And having the limited choices in Denmark when I'm there, which is where I recorded most of the LA Gun stuff, really makes the process go faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fucking great. Next track, you know what I mean? It's like, okay. So here, like mic position, like, I don't know. Let's try this other Marshall instead of this Marshall. That's exactly the same Marshall, All this shit gets in your head where, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna use a Fender Clean Amp. Let's see what that sounds like, Too many options.
By the end of it, you don't even remember what sounds good anymore.
Yeah, you don't know what sounds good. And that happens to me a lot because sometimes I'll go for a really heavy tone on something, and I'll record a telly through just like, kind of a punchy Marshall. And I'll actually trick myself into thinking that the punchy Marshall, that the telly sounds heavier. And then I'll listen the next day and I'll be like, yeah, I know what I was thinking, but no. It's like the Les Paul through that Marshall worked, The VHT gets a lot of love in the studio when I'm here because it has a Dumble distortion circuit, which is a different kind of grain in the distortion, which is like really cool. It almost sounds like when it's recorded, it almost sounds like a fuzz pedal.
Yeah.
Like overdrive. So there's some of that on the LA Guns record for sure. But you use the stuff you buy. You use the stuff you get.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you bringing the? Do you play the Kramer Gunstar Voyager yourself? I know that's your new signature, right? Are you bringing that out on the road?
Absolutely. I have. There's like certain stuff like Never Enough and Cannonball off the new record. There's a few songs I have to use that guitar because it's the only Floyd guitar that I bring on the road. If I would play that guitar exclusively if I was 25, if I was younger and only playing that style, it's the perfect guitar for those things. But I'm gonna be 56 next year, man. I want to play cool vintage guitars, dude.
Seriously. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to beat a 59 Les Paul.
It's really hard to beat it.
That's awesome, man. Well, let's see, Tracii, I think that's, everything from me. Is there anything I missed or that you wanted to add?
No, we could be here for months if we just started going in and out down that route. We're good.
Well, thanks for indulging me with the gear conversation. I love to talk to other guitar players about what their rigs are right now.
Fun.
Yeah, man. Well, again, congrats on all the albums that you're working on. Looking forward to the release of Checkered Past, and I'll keep my eyes peeled for some social disorder stuff.
Yeah, that's coming. I'm working on that second record now as well.
Cool. Well, I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay, brother. Thanks, awesome. Brian.
Yeah, you take care.